Okay, Silk Road people, this has been requested of me to make a couple of build videos for you guys so that you can have a look at very roughly some builds that you can do. Well, I turn back on my buffs because I always turn that off. Some builds that you can do to kind of get into veteran content, not maybe hard mode content, maybe not your end gamey stuff, but this will at least get you roughly 80-90k parsing, at least for the Arcanist, because that's super easy to get a parse on. And it'll get you enough to get into most regular veteran trials where DPS requirement has been put in place. So we will start off nice and easy with today's Arcanist. This is my parse setup. And for those of you thinking, why is she showing us a parse setup? This is because I run two different setups personally. Very little changes between these two builds in retrospect, but this is how I personally run it. So we're going to start off with the Flail of Abyssal Impact, more of the StamArc's Flail, and yes, I know I am horrible pronouncing that. So this is obviously a small damage buff, but it also gives you a crux. You want 3 cruxes at a time before you use your beam. We will show here on the Persecutor 2, 3. See how I have 3 crux? I spam it 3 times, and you can see if we look at my skills, my Exhausting Fate Carver is glowing. This means that the Exhausting Fate Carver is ready to be used. Okay. Fucking 17k damage, didn't mean to press that. So, Flail. Not only do we use this in content, we use this in parsing. In parsing, this generates you your crux. In content, this also heals you. It also, as you can see, has a lovely little bit of an execute, similar to that of the Jesus Beam in the Templars. 100% more damage to enemies with less than 50% health. Okay? It's your self-heal. You do not need to be close to an enemy to proc it and get the self-heal out of it, so don't worry if you're in content and you've not maybe got a healer near you, or you're in a 3-4 man dungeon and you've not got a healer. Spam that, that is your self-heal. Next skill in the parse setup is Exhausting Fate Carver. We changed this from content to parsing because this one does not give a shield. In content you want the other morph that gives a shield. We will go over that in a few minutes when I go back to my armory station. We run this on parse builds because it just generates more damage. Damned cat now trying to cuddle me. Trap obviously is one of the best bleed damages in this game. As you can see down here, it's got 17,000 bleed damage over 20 seconds. I am shit at maths, so if you want to work that out, go fucking nuts. I personally don't, because I fucking hate maths, literally. Deadly Cloak. Obviously, again, this is a very basic setup. You just have this for the physical damage that it gives, and Major Evasion, reducing your damage taken, is always a lovely buff. Camo Hunter, you do not proc this, you just have this here as a passive. Okay, this is purely here for the Major Savagery and Major Prophecy. This means that you don't have to run, whatchamacall, weapon power or spell power pots. Jesus wept, my brain went for a second there. You don't need to run specific pots to give you your Major Savagery and Prophecy. And finally, Flawless Dawnbreaker. Again, you don't run it. You don't proc it, you just have it there for the passives. Your proc is always going to be the Languid Eye ulti. So that is going to be the ulti you always use. And the same thing applies to the Languid Eye as it does to Fate Carver. Proc it with 3 cruxes. Okay? Going to the back bar, again, you can see we have Camo Hunter, again, Major Savagery and Major Prophecy, so that we don't need to use fancy spots, we can use very basic tri-stat pots. Inspired Scholarship is a lovely little buff that gives additional damage, and it generates a crux. So when you are beaming, that is absorbing crux, you have that procced at the same time, and that gives crux. So you have a constant crux uptime. So when you're parsing or in content, you only have to proc your flail, this skill here, twice. to get the extra crocs, and then you will have a constant uptime of 3 crocs. And again, major brutality and major sorcery, weapon and spell damage. Scalding Rune. Lovely little dot. Lovely little dot for flame damage. And again, you can do the maths on it if you really want to. Over the 26 seconds for 14,000 damage. I hate maths, so no, we're not doing that. Fulminating Rune is one of your Arcanist skills, and again, it gives a synergy. Now, this is important if you're in trial content and one of your DDs is a Dragon Knight with Alkosh on it. I nearly said Zen, so that's completely the wrong set. Alkosh. Alkosh you get for a synergy. Now, you don't have to worry about that on the dummy. The dummy already has Alkosh on it. So, you got extra damage from that with the Fulminating Rune. Again, I'm not doing the maths, but 10,000 extra frost damage within 7 meters. So that's quite a nice bit of damage. And like I say, I'm not doing fucking maths, but it's roughly a K damage, K magicka damage per second when you proc this skill. And of course, Blockade of Fire. Fire, even. Ugh. Blockade of Fire rather than the Unstable Wall is the one I personally use. This is because A, it is a bigger, as you can see, it's a lot bigger. Bigger sometimes actually is better in this game, guys. But it also lasts longer, as you can see by my time on it. So, burning enemies take 10% more damage. You proccing that with your Scalding Rune, which is giving you flame damage. It's going to do an extra 10%. So let's look at where we get these skills from. Obviously, Languid Eye is your ultimate from Herald of the Tome. You've got Exhausting Fate Carver, which is your Fate Carver morph. Abyssal Impact morphs into StamArc's Flail. Inspired Scholarship is Tombbearer's Inspiration. And Fulminating Rune is the Imperfect Ring morph. You want all 4 passives from here, specifically this one with a Herald of the Tomb ability slotted. Status effects are very, very nice little things to have. You will see I also have Crocsweaver's armor unlocked. This is for in content that we will go over in a minute, but again, you want all of these passives. And finally, in your curative room forms, you don't really run any of the skills unless you're asked to run Xena's Disc. And then you've got this, you need the passive from this skill line because when you generate Crocs, you are restoring your stamina because you are going to be a stamina arcanist with you using this build. And this is increasing your stam recovery and your mag recovery, which is quite important. So other skills you have is obviously Deadly Cloak from the two-handed skill line. Two-handed, dual wield even, good god. And as ever, we use daggers. The reason we use daggers is, if we look down here, each dagger increases your critical chance rating by 657. Double that is roughly 1300 and something. I am not mathsing maths today, so I don't fancy doing the exact calculations for you guys, but you can see that it is useful to have daggers. Obviously, I have got a lot of different options leveled on this because I do a lot of different shite. We're going to ignore the fact of bow, and we're going to look at crushing Destro Staff. Crushing Shock is nice to have. It's 4 shocks morph, it's an interrupt. You never really know when you're going to need an interrupt to be slotted, so have it and use it in your flex spot on the back bar. Of course, Elemental Blockade, and then the passives. We all know we need our passives. All of the light armor passives, all of the medium armor passives. Soul Magic, I like personally, not everybody likes to run it. Fighter's Guild, you need for Flawless Dawnbreaker, Camo Hunter, Barb Trap, and these passives. Slayer, 3% additional damage for each Fighter's Guild ability slotted. So if I front bar, I've got a 9% buff. If I back bar, I've got a 3% buff. Purely because of that Camo Hunter. Camo Hunter is giving me immediately that big buff. Banish the Wicked, generate 3 ultimate whenever you kill an enemy. That applies to both bars because again, I have Camo Hunter both bars. And then finally, Fighter's Guild abilities, Skill Tracker. You only really need this for the Barb Trap because it's an additional 10%. And then if you're trying to bring this into PvP, again, Barb Trap. And it's PvP against vampires and werewolves. Mages Guild, we want the passives for Scalding Rune. We don't need this for content, but for parsing, this is nice. And Undaunted, you do want this. Believe me, you want that synergy. That synergy restoration can make the difference between you being able to put a beam out in content and not. And this one, I always have it unlocked, even though I don't run any heavy armor on my builds anymore. This is a very old passive, but it's still one of the best. You don't worry about assault and support. Obviously, I'm an orc on this build. I prefer orc because it gives me max stam and max health. I'm a bit more chunky. I prefer being chunky. I am a tank usually. I am a chunky bitch. Sue me. And of course, weapon and spell damage. I bloody love this skill. If you want to be a dark elf, I know people who are parsing really well with dark elf builds. It's entirely up to you. When we come to our craft skills, you want medicinal use. You can ignore the rest of these. I like my hirelings. And you want gourmand. 20 minutes to the food that you eat. So, let's look at the foods. I personally do not run this when I'm parsing. When I'm parsing, I run the hearty garlic corn chowder. This is because it's just max stamina and it's a nice little buff. You don't need the regen on the Arcanist because of all the passives that you have already giving you that regen in content. You can run the max health, max stam food. Again, you don't really need high stamina or really stamina regen. I have Dubious and I have Lava Foot because I never know what I'm going to want to do that day and I like to have options. Tri-stat potions. Crown tri-stat potions, guys. Literally, that's what I run 90% of the time. I have my Essence of Health. It's the exact same. I buy it sometimes because my brain says it's better and realistically it's really not. It's exactly the same as this. Except maybe it lasts slightly longer. I don't know. And then I've obviously got my Essence of Weapon Power that I've already covered. We don't actually need to run this because we already get these buffs off of our Camel Hunter, and this is for those of you that want to really push your numbers and go for the high numbers. You have heroism pots. Personally, I don't bother with them. So, gear time. Okay? Deadly. Really freaking easy to get deadly. Okay? You literally go to a guild trader and get it. Daggers are going to be slightly more expensive, so if you need to go up to Bruma and get the AP done that way, I would recommend it. But if you can get somebody to very kindly gift you the daggers, do it, because they're a pain in the backside. I personally run Nirnhond Precise, despite it saying charged here. I actually need to change this one. It is going to be Precise because I find Precise is just slightly better for me as a DD, but you can see here. So we do flame damage, main hand, poison, offhand, status effects, and all of that. And this is increasing your weapon spell damage, so you want the flame to be increased with the weapon and spell damage. Back bar, we are going with the Maelstrom Perfected Inferno Staff for me personally, because I have the bragging rights to say I've done Maelstrom in fucking Veteran. If you can only manage Maelstrom in normal, do not worry. It's literally not going to change anything. It gives you offensive penetration. That is the only difference between perfected and non-perfected for Maelstrom. So if you can only manage to do Maelstrom on normal, do not worry. That's perfectly acceptable and fine. Slime Craw, really easy to get. We run this in light. Now the reason we run this in light is for that light passive bonus of additional penetration. Okay. Deadly, again, deadly. It's really easy to pick up on the fucking guild traders. Okay, now you can see I run Perfected Coral Riptide on my build with Divines and the Mundus of the Thief. Thief Mundus is a must for all DDs. Now, if you cannot get Coral Riptide, if you can't manage to clear if you can't manage to get a clear in Dread Cell Reef on normal, on veteran, whatever, don't worry. Secondary option, just as good an option. Ansels, again, doesn't have to be perfected. Regular Sanity's Edge is absolutely acceptable, right? The main thing is that you run a trial set, okay? Because if we look at Coral Riptide, right, you're gaining with the 3 items the Minor Slayer, and that's what you're looking for. Okay? So, non-perfected coral riptide is exactly the same numbers as regular coral riptide, and you're still getting your Minor Slayer. All you're missing between non-perfected and perfected is crit chance. It's not that big of a difference, okay? Some other options you have if you cannot get coral riptide and you can only maybe do a normal cloud rest. Reliquin, perfectly acceptable set to run. It's not you, it's not you, it's not you, it's... I thought it was from here. Maybe I'm wrong? That's the tank set. Yes, it is this one. Okay. If you cannot get Coral Riptide, but you've managed to get your hands on all of your deadly armor, but not the daggers, don't worry, Helra. Run Advancing Yokida. Again, it's martial melee damage, your crit chance is increased. Okay? It's an old set, but it's a very easily got set because everybody runs Helra. It is 15 minutes out of your night to do veteran Helra. It's not that bad to get. Like I said, Ansels, you can do it in normal or veteran, relatively easy to get. It's a nice set to have. If we're going to look at dungeons and you're just wanting to run normal dungeons, bit out of date again, but you never know. Kinraz. It's still a really good set. It'll buff your flame damage. Another option is, and this is a personal favourite of mine, Griffin's Reprisal from Coral Airy. A lot of people aren't fans of Coral Airy sets. They're not a fan of Griffin's Reprisal. I personally love it when I need to parse because it's an extra bleed dot and you never know when you're going to need that. A firm favourite of everybody is running Deadly Strike Pillar of Nirn. I fully agree. The bleed dot is stunning. It's a brilliant bleed dot, and you can see when I was looking through my own build, it's one of the options I have for parsing with. It's something I enjoy having. Azure Blight, another one. Okay, the dungeon is hellishly long and terrible, but Azure Blight is an option if you're needing just a quick set, right? And this is all, obviously this is all dungeon sets, but you never know, when it's going to happen that you can get in, because you don't have to do them on vet to get them, you just have to do them on normal. Final set for dungeons would be Aegis Collar. Again, it's crit damage, so it is very much reliant on you being able to get those crit damages in, but it's a nice set to have on the back bar. If we look at regular dungeons that are even easier to farm, oh dear lordy, where are they? Because now I'm trying to think. Celine's monster set, 2-piece it with Deadly Strike and Griffin's Reprisal. There you go, bleed. Constant bleed dot on your Arcanist. It's quite a nice. It's a bit of an odd out there setup, but it could well work. You never know. Stormmaster. Okay, it relies on heavy attacks, but if you're building a 1-bar Arcanist, it can work. And as ever, we have Slimecraw, which we need desperately. If we look at DLC zones, there is probably some sets in here. Here you go. Bakali Gourmand. You will see it a lot used for PvP builds. I have it on a PvP Arcanist personally. I do quite enjoy it. I cannot fault it for its DPS. Let's have a look. Obviously, we're not going to cover crafted sets because I am not at my crafting house right now. If I was, I would be giving you guys all of the crafted sets because there are so many options. Is this? That's a medium set. Yeah. Okay. If you wanted something out there again, fucking Venomous Smite. If this is all you can get your hands on, it's all stuff you can grab in the guild traders, guys. So it's not something you really need to worry about having. Final point here, obviously, is all your attributes go into Stam, max health Stam food, and you want the Thief, Mundus. So if we swap actually before I swap really quickly. Champion Bar, Exploiter, Biting Aura, Thaumatage, Wrathful Strikes. Wrathful Strikes, as ever, is your weapon and spell damage increase. Thaumatage is your dot damage, that is buffing things like your Scalding Rune and your Unstable Wall of Elements. Area of effect attacks are, again, your Wall of Elements, because that's technically an AoE. And your beam would be an AoE, and then Exploiter is off balance, so it's just buffing you when you're doing that. Okay? In the red tree, you want Bastion. This is increasing damage shields. I do not change my CP between parsing and content mind, guys, so this is a content setup. Rejuvenation, health recovery, armor, always needed, and boundless vitality for that max health. So if we look at the content build, you can see very little actually changes. My skill setup stays majorly the same. Wrathful Strikes, Thaumatage, Biting Aura, and Exploiter to Bastion, Rejuvenation, Fortified, and Boundless Vitality. Nothing changes in my CP points between content and everything else. Again, medicinal use with an orc and gourmand, because my food stays exactly the same. My skills and my passive stay exactly the same, except for, I think, two small things. I need to reslot and save that really quickly, because I will forget. Okay, so two small things will change on my build when I'm in content compared to when I'm in, regular parsing. So first thing is I changed to Pragmatic Fate Carver over the Exhausting Morph. This is because it gives me a shield. Right? So if I go over to my Persecutor again, 1, 2, 3, grab my Crux up. So you see how my buff bar, my health bar has that little red slit, and then it has that. That is because it's giving me a shield whenever I'm proccing my Pragmatic Fate Carver. All the rest of my skills stay exactly the same, including my Dawnbreaker. Back bar, I run Viking's Gaze. This is because it follows the targets when it runs around. So when you're in content, you proc your beam, it will follow around. Second different skill I use is rather than Scalding Rune, I run the Cruxweaver's Armor. Again, it's another shield, it's another buff that if you're not quite sure what you're doing, you're kind of new to the content, you're kind of unsure if you're healers or something, it's nice to have that extra shield there. Okay? And that's literally the only difference that you'll have between, if you're running this build, between content and parsing, and exact same thing applies. All the sets stay the same. If you can't get your hands on Perfected, don't worry. Majority of the time, you can literally look at it right here when I do it. Okay? Majority of the time we'll use Vast, for example. Asylum, Daggers, 2-piece, it's bragging rights, it's critical chance. Cloud Rest, Glanway. So the 5-piece there, and the 5-piece adds extra health. It's bragging rights, guys. You do not need to worry about having it imperfected. It's bragging rights, it's maybe an extra few DPS. It's not hugely important that you need to have it at all times, so don't worry. If you can't run a meta setup like the rest of these build videos I'll show you on YouTube, or that you'll see for people's POVs from, for example, actually fucking Silk Road Prog, for example, you'll see that we run very much meta setups. This is because the majority of those DDs have sat with me and we have farmed Dreadsail Refund Veteran to make sure they've all got it. We've sat and we've farmed various different dungeons and all of that to make sure that they've got it. The only thing different, well, it's not even different, on parse and content for the Arcanist is I would always recommend the Velothi Amulet. As you can see, I have it quite literally on my content, parse, Godslayer, and Unchained builds. It is the best mythic for the Arcanist to have. Because when you beam, so going to beam, 3, it's really difficult to get a light attack off right after the beam. And because the beam lasts so long, you're not able to light attack weave very comfortably. So it's much, much easier to run the Velocity Amulet so your light attacks are reduced and you're still able to get the maximum DPS. Okay? Have a watch of this, guys. I will be next looking at doing either a Sorcerer or a Necromancer build setup for people, as that is what was voted for the DD options on the Silk Road group. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you later.